The pounding came before the roosters had even thought about crowing. 3 sharp raps against weathered wood. Then silence. Then 3 more. Urgent enough to wake the dead. Or at least wake Eli Dawson from the restless sleep that had become his nightly companion these past 5 years. He lay still for a moment, listening. The ranch house groaned around him the way old timber does when the night air turns cold, but underneath that familiar sound was something else. Breathing, quick and shallow, like a spooked colt trying to hold still. Eli's hand found the Colt 45 beneath his pillow before his feet found the floor. The floorboards were ice against his bare soles as he padded toward the door. Avoiding the squeaky plank third from the wall, a man learns his house's secrets when he lives alone long enough. Another knock, softer this time, almost apologetic. "State your business," Eli called through the door, thumb on the hammer. "Please, mister," a girl's voice, thin as wire. We need help." We. Eli's jaw tightened. Nothing good ever came knocking at a man's door before dawn, especially not in multiples. But there was something in that voice, not just fear, but the kind of bone-deep weariness that comes from running too long and too hard. He lifted the bar and cracked the door, keeping the revolver low but ready. 3 shapes stood on his porch, huddled together like quail in a storm. The tallest couldn't have been more than 12, a girl with tangled brown hair and eyes that had seen too much. She had her arms around 2 smaller figures, a boy, maybe 10, standing rigid as a fence post, and a little one pressed against her hip, no more than 3 or 4. "We don't cost much, mister," the girl said, and something in Eli's chest cracked like river ice in spring. "We can work, all of us, even little Sam here. He can gather eggs once he's feeling better." The child, Sam, coughed then, a wet rattling sound that Eli recognized. He'd heard it before, in another life, from another small body that hadn't made it through the winter. "Where are your folks?" he asked, though he already knew the answer from their hollow cheeks and the way their clothes hung like scarecrow rags. The girl, she had the look of a Ruth or a Mary, something biblical and steady, lifted her chin. "Gone, sir. Fever took Mama last month. Papa." She trailed off, and the boy beside her shifted, protective. "We've been walking 3 days from Cedar Ridge. Heard in town you might need hands for the ranch." Eli hadn't been to town in 2 weeks, hadn't advertised for help in never. But looking at these 3, the girl trying so hard to be grown, the boy watching him with sharp, calculating eyes, and the little one burning with fever, he found himself stepping back. Get inside before that child catches his death. They filed past him like they were entering a church, careful not to touch anything. The boy had to be the girl's brother from the way they moved in tandem, kept himself between Eli and the others, young shoulders squared despite their trembling. The main room wasn't much, but it was warm. Embers still glowed in the hearth, and Eli stirred them to life while the children stood in a careful line by the door, dripping trail dust and uncertainty. "Sit," he said, rougher than he meant to. 5 years of talking mainly to horses had worn the gentleness from his voice. "Boy, what's your name?" "Jonah, sir." The kid's voice was steady, but his eyes tracked Eli's every movement. "Well, Jonah, there's a bucket by the well out back. Fetch some water. Your sister can get that young one settled while I find something for the fever." Ruth, he'd decided that's what he'd call her until she said otherwise, looked ready to protest leaving Jonah alone with a stranger. But another cough from Sam decided her. She guided the child to the horsehair sofa, crooning something soft and wordless. Eli watched Jonah slip out the back door, noted how the boy checked the yard first. Looking for what? Eli couldn't say, but he recognized the watchfulness. It was the same way Eli had moved after the war. after losing Sarah and little Jake to the cholera that swept through while he was gone playing soldier. In the kitchen, he found the willow bark tea Sarah had always kept for fevers. His hands shook slightly as he prepared it. When was the last time he'd done this? When was the last time his house had held any sound besides his own breathing and the wind through the rafters? "Ruth," the girl said quietly when he returned. She'd settled Sam on the sofa, his small body curled like a question mark. "My name's Ruth. That's my brother Jonah. And this here's Sam." "Sam your brother too?" Something flickered across her face. "He's ours now." Eli didn't push. Everyone in the territories was running from something, and a wise man didn't go digging in graves that weren't his own. He handed her the tea. "Get some of this in him." Slow sips. Jonah returned with the water, moving quiet as a shadow. The boy set the bucket down and took up position by the window, peering out at the graying sky, looking for something, or someone. "You running from trouble?" Eli asked, direct as a bullet. Ruth's hand stilled on Sam's forehead. "No, sir. Trouble's what we're running to get away from, not bringing with us." But Jonah's knuckles were white where he gripped the windowsill, and Ruth's eyes kept darting to the door like she expected the devil himself to walk through. Eli poured himself coffee from the pot that lived permanent-like on the stove, bitter and black as his mood most mornings. But this morning felt different. The house felt different. Fuller. Like it remembered what it was supposed to be. "I got a spare room," he heard himself saying. "Was my boys. You can bed down there tonight. Tomorrow we'll see about work." "We can work now," Ruth insisted, starting to rise, but Eli waved her back. "Only work that needs doing now is getting that fever down and getting some food in your bellies." "When's the last time you ate?" The silence was answer enough. Eli set about making breakfast like he hadn't in years. Flapjacks and bacon, coffee for the older ones, milk warmed with honey for Sam. The children watched him like they'd never seen such riches. And when he set the plates down, Ruth's eyes went bright with tears she was too proud to shed. "Thank you," she whispered. "Just eat." They did, with the careful manners of children raised right, but the hunger of those who'd gone without. Even Sam managed a few bites between coughs, his fever-bright eyes tracking Eli with curious trust. As dawn finally broke across the valley, painting the mountains purple gold, Eli found himself studying these three strangers who'd knocked their way into his life. Ruth had the determined set of a girl who'd grown up too fast, feeding Sam with one hand while her eyes stayed watchful. Jonah ate mechanically, constantly checking the windows, the doors, the shadows, and Sam. Sam reminded him so fierce of Jake it was like a knife between his ribs. "We really can work," Ruth said again as she cleared the plates without being asked. "I can cook and clean and mend. Jonah's good with horses, aren't you, Jonah? And Sam." "Sam's job is to get well," Eli cut her off. "Rest of it we'll figure as we go." He showed them to Jake's room, untouched these 5 years except for his monthly dusting. The toys were still on the shelves, the quilt Sarah had sewn still on the bed. Ruth's face went soft looking at it all, and she touched Sam's hair gentle-like. You had children," she said, and not a question. "Had a life," Eli replied, and left it at that. But as he headed back to the main room, leaving them to settle, he heard Sam's voice, hoarse but wondering. "We gonna stay, Ruthie?" "I don't know, baby," Ruth answered. "But it's warm, and he's got kind eyes under all that gruff. Maybe we can rest a spell." Eli stood in his empty kitchen, looking at the breakfast dishes that proved he hadn't dreamed at all. 3 children, running from something, looking for safety. He should send them on, should keep his distance, keep his heart locked up safe where it couldn't be broke again. But the sound of that cough, the weight of those watchful eyes, the way Ruth had said we don't cost much, like she was used to not being worth anything at all. He poured another cup of coffee and walked out to the porch to watch the sun rise. Whatever trouble was following those children, it would find Eli Dawson ready. He'd failed to protect his own family once. Maybe the good Lord, if he had any mercy left, was giving him another chance. Or maybe he was just a fool about to learn that some wounds never heal. They just find new ways to bleed. Either way, those children were staying, at least until Sam's fever broke, at least until the fear faded from Jonah's eyes, at least until Ruth stopped looking like she expected to be thrown out with the morning trash, at least until Eli remembered what it felt like to have his house be a home. The rooster hadn't even cleared his throat when Eli heard movement in the kitchen. He'd been awake for an hour already, lying in bed and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of other people in his house. Sam's labored breathing, Ruth's soft humming as she tended him through the night, Jonah's restless pacing. When he finally made his way to the kitchen, Ruth was already there, the stove crackling to life under her careful hands. She'd found his mother's old apron somewhere and tied it twice around her thin waist. The coffee was already brewing. "You don't need to," Eli started, but she cut him off with a look that was part determination, part plea. "I told you we'd work. Can't have you thinking we're charity cases. Never said you were. Your eyes did when you saw Sam." She cracked eggs into a bowl with practiced ease. "We've been taking care of ourselves for a while now. Mr. Dawson, just need a place to do it is all." Eli settled at the table, watching her move around his kitchen like she'd been doing it for years instead of hours. There was something about the way she held herself, careful but not afraid, like a wild thing that had decided to trust but hadn't forgotten how to run. "How's the boy?" "A fever broke around 3. He's sleeping natural now." She glanced toward the hallway. "Jonah's with him, won't leave his side. That one. Been like that since—" She didn't finish, but Eli didn't need her to. He recognized the fierce protection of children who'd learned early that grown folks couldn't always be counted on. By the time the sun was properly up, Jonah had emerged. Sam's small hand clutched in his. The little one looked better, still pale, but his eyes were clear instead of fever bright. He studied Eli with the frank curiosity of the very young. "You're the mister," Sam announced, like he'd solved a great puzzle. "Reckon I am. Ruthie says we're staying here now, are we?" Eli looked at Ruth, who was suddenly very interested in the bacon. "For a spell," he said finally. "Till you're all the way better." Sam nodded solemnly, then coughed into his elbow the way someone had taught him proper. "I can gather eggs when I'm better," Ruthie said. "That's so. Well, happens I got some hens that would appreciate the attention. They're particular about who handles their eggs, though. Think you're up for it?" The boy's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Yes, sir, I'm real careful. Mama used to say." He trailed off, his small face clouding. Come on, Sam," Jonah said quietly, guiding him to the table. "Let's eat so you can get strong." They settled into breakfast, and Eli found himself remembering what this felt like, the simple rhythm of a family meal, even if this weren't exactly a family. Ruth had made enough food for a regiment, like she was trying to prove her worth in flapjacks and bacon. Jonah ate steadily but kept one eye on the window, that watchfulness never leaving him. After breakfast, Eli said, "I'll show you around the place. Got 60 head of cattle, dozen horses, chickens, and a milk cow that's meaner than a rattlesnake with a toothache." "I'm good with animals," Jonah said quickly, "then they trust me." "That's so? Well, we'll see if Bessie agrees. She hasn't trusted anyone since my—" He stopped. "In a while." After the meal, Ruth started clearing dishes, but Eli noticed how she swayed slightly on her feet. When had she last slept proper? When had any of them? "You leave those," he said. "Let's get you all situated first." He showed them around the ranch, Sam riding on Jonah's shoulders despite Ruth's protests that he was too heavy. The boy wasn't. Eli could see that plain enough. Jonah was small for his age, all wire and determination, but he carried Sam like the weight was nothing compared to whatever else he'd been carrying. The barn smelled of hay and horses and honest work. Eli's horses whickered at the strangers. But when Jonah stepped forward, hand outstretched, even ornery old Zeus settled right down. "You weren't lying about being good with them," Eli observed. Jonah shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. "They know I won't hurt them." There was a story there, but Eli didn't push. He showed them the chicken coop, where Sam immediately decided the red hen was his favorite, and the garden plot Sarah had kept that had gone to seed and sorrow. "I could get that growing again," Ruth said softly. "If you'd like. Seems a shame to waste good soil." Eli's throat went tight. "If you've a mind to." The days fell into a pattern quicker than Eli expected. Ruth took over the kitchen and house like she'd been born to it. Though he noticed she never threw anything away. Every scrap went to the chickens or the compost. Every worn piece of cloth got saved for mending. Jonah worked the horses and cattle with a natural ease that spoke of experience beyond his years. And Sam, once his cough faded to occasional, followed his chosen siblings like a devoted shadow, gathering eggs with solemn pride and bringing Eli treasures, interesting rocks, feathers, a butterfly wing. It was the butterfly wing that nearly undid him. Sam presented it one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner, the sky painted in shades of rose and gold. "It's for you," Sam said, placing it careful in Eli's calloused palm. "'Cause you're nice and you let us stay." Jake had done the same thing once, bringing him a blue jay feather like it was gold nugget. Eli closed his hand gently around the wing, feeling its impossible lightness. "Hey, thank you, son. I'll treasure it." Sam beamed and scrambled back to where Ruth was mending one of Jonah's shirts. The three of them made a picture there in the fading light, Ruth's hands steady on the needle, Jonah whittling something from a piece of scrap wood. Sam playing with a set of carved animals Eli had dug out from Jake's room. But even in the peace of the moment, Eli noticed things. How Jonah always sat where he could see all approaches to the house. How Ruth startled at unexpected sounds, a coyote's howl, the crack of settling wood. How they all went still and watchful whenever hoofbeats sounded on the distant road. After a week, Eli finally asked. They were in the barn, Jonah helping him muck stalls while Ruth and Sam worked in the garden. "You expecting someone?" Jonah's pitchfork stilled. "What makes you ask that?" "A boy your age shouldn't know to check for riders at dawn and dusk, shouldn't know to sleep with your boots on neither." Jonah went back to mucking, but his shoulders were rigid. "Just being careful." "Careful of what?" "Of things that ain't found us yet." It wasn't an answer, but it was honest. Eli let it be. Truth had a way of coming out when it was ready, and pushing would only make the boy clamp up tighter than a bear trap. That night, Sam's cough came back with a vengeance. Eli woke to the sound of it, harsh and barking, and Ruth's soothing murmurs. He made his way to their room to find her walking Sam around, the boy's small body shaking with each cough. "Steam," Eli said. "He needs steam. Bring him to the kitchen." They spent the next hour huddled around the stove, a tent of blankets trapping the steam from boiling water mixed with pine needles and mint from Sarah's old herb garden. Sam breathed easier bit by bit, finally falling asleep against Ruth's shoulder. "This isn't his first bout," Eli observed quietly. Ruth shook her head. "Started about 2 months back, right after—" She caught herself. "It comes and goes." Worse when he's scared or cold. You should have said, I could have been preparing medicines. They were not your responsibility, Mr. Dawson. You're under my roof. That makes you exactly my responsibility. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw she was even younger than he'd thought. 16, maybe 17, trying to be mother and father and protector all at once. Why are you helping us? She asked. Most folks would have sent us packing that first morning. Eli was quiet for a long moment, listening to Sam's steadier breathing. Had a boy once, not much older than Sam when the fever took him. Him and his mother both, while I was off playing war. Came back to an empty house and 2 stones on the hill. Been empty ever since. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, just... He struggled for words. This place needs voices again, or needs life. You 3 bring that. We bring trouble too, Ruth said softly. Jonah won't say, but I know he feels it coming. He's never wrong about these things. What kind of trouble? She was quiet so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, the kind that wears a badge and thinks that makes it right. Eli's blood chilled. Badge trouble was the worst kind. The law twisted to serve those who wore it instead of those it was meant to protect. This about Sam? Ruth's arms tightened around the sleeping boy. Everything's about Sam now. She wouldn't say more, and Eli didn't push. But he made his way to the root cellar after they'd gone back to bed, checking his ammunition, cleaning guns that were already clean. Whatever was coming, it would find him ready. The next morning brought a cold snap, the kind that warned winter wasn't done with them yet. Eli found Jonah already up, standing at the kitchen window with that watchful stillness. See something? Tracks, Jonah said quietly. Edge of the property by the big pine, horse tracks, but they stopped and turned back. Eli joined him at the window. Could be anyone, travelers, locals out hunting. Could be, but Jonah's tone said he didn't believe it. They went about the day's work. But there was a tension now, like the air before a thunderstorm. Ruth kept Sam close, finding tasks for him in the house instead of letting him roam. Jonah worked silent and steady, but Eli caught him checking the horizon every few minutes. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, venison stew and fresh bread, Ruth was determined to fatten them all up. Sam piped up with a child's innocent clarity. Are the bad men coming, Ruthie? The silence was deafening. Ruth's spoon clattered against her bowl, and Jonah went rigid as stone. What bad men, Sam? Eli asked, keeping his voice easy. Sam looked confused. The ones that wanted to take me away. The marshal man with the mean eyes. He said I had to go with him, but Ruthie said no. And then we ran and... Sam, Ruth said sharply, then gentler. Remember what we talked about not telling stories? But it was too late. The truth hung in the air like gun smoke. They were running from the law, or at least from someone wearing law's costume. And now Eli was harboring them, which made him guilty of whatever they were accused of in the eyes of any badge-wearing man who came calling. He should have been angry, should have felt tricked. Instead, looking at Sam's innocent face, at Ruth's desperate eyes, at Jonah's protective stance, all he felt was a cold, steady resolve. Finish your stew, he said calmly. It's getting cold. They ate in silence, but when the meal was done and the children were clearing dishes, Eli caught Ruth's arm gently. Tomorrow, he said low, you tell me all of it. No more half-truths. I need to know what's coming if I'm going to protect you proper. Her eyes filled with tears she wouldn't let fall. You don't have to. Yes, he said firmly, I do. You're mine now, all 3 of you, and I protect what's mine. She nodded, throat working like she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. That night, Eli didn't sleep. He sat in his chair by the window, rifle across his knees, watching the darkness. Somewhere out there, trouble was stirring. He could feel it the way old bones feel weather changing. But for the first time in 5 years, he had something worth protecting again. Something worth fighting for. Let them come, he thought. Let them come and see what happens when they try to take what Eli Dawson has claimed as his own. The morning came gray and bitter, with clouds hanging low enough to scrape the mountain peaks. Ruth stood at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking, while Jonah kept Sam occupied in the other room with Jake's old wooden soldiers. "You sure you want to hear this?" Ruth asked, not meeting Eli's eyes. "I need to hear it. Can't fight what I don't understand." She nodded, took a breath that seemed to come from her toes. "Sam ain't my brother. Ain't Jonah's neither." "Figured as much. Boy's got different colored eyes than either of you. They found him at the Riverside Children's Home about 4 months back. I was working there, cooking, cleaning, whatever they needed. Honest work." She said it fierce, like she expected him to challenge it. When he didn't, she continued. "Place was supposed to be Christian charity, taking in orphans and foundlings. But there was something wrong about it." Eli waited. He'd learned patience in the war, learned that silence could draw out truth better than questions. Children would come in, but not all of them stayed. The older ones, the stronger ones, they'd disappear in the night. Matron Graves said they'd been adopted, found good families, but... Ruth's jaw worked. "But Jonah saw different. I wasn't supposed to be there." Jonah's voice came from the doorway. They turned to find him standing there, Sam's hand in his. "Wasn't supposed to see." "It's all right," Ruth said softly. "Mr. Dawson needs to know." Jonah led Sam to Ruth, then took up his usual position by the window. "I'd snuck out of the boys' dormitory. Say, Tommy Reeves had been coughing something awful, and I wanted to get him water. That's when I saw the wagon." "What wagon?" Eli asked. "Black one, with bars on the windows, like they use for transporting prisoners." Jonah's voice was flat, emotionless, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the windowsill. "They were loading kids into it, the strong ones, the ones who could work." Eli's blood ran cold. He'd heard whispers of such things, children sold to mines, to factories, to worse, but to hear it confirmed. "I hid," Jonah continued. "Watched them take 6 kids that night. Tommy was one of them. He was crying, begging, but they just..." He stopped, swallowed hard. Deputy Marshal Trenholm was there. He was the one giving orders, money changing hands with Matron Graves. "Trenholm," Eli repeated, filing the name away. "Know him?" "He by reputation works out of Fort Grant, supposed to be cleaning up the territory." Ruth's laugh was bitter. Cleaning it of unwanted children, more like making profit on misery. "But that wasn't the worst of it," Jonah said. "Tell him about Sam, Ruth." Ruth pulled Sam closer, the boy contentedly playing with a wooden horse, oblivious to the weight of the conversation. Sam came to the home different than the others, middle of the night, brought by Trenholm himself, said the boy was a ward of the territory, needed special caring for... "Special caring," Eli repeated, "kept separate from the other children, better food, clean clothes, own room." Matron Graves was nervous around him, like he was precious cargo she didn't want damaged. Ruth's voice dropped. "Then I heard them talking one night, Trenholm and another man, fancy dressed, from the capital." She paused, gathering courage. "The man said Sam was an embarrassment that needed to be dealt with quiet-like. Said there was a family back east. Powerful family that didn't want certain indiscretions coming to light. Sam was proof of something that could ruin important people. You're saying Sam's somebody's bastard? Someone important enough to want him disappeared? Ruth flinched at the harsh word, but nodded. The fancy man had papers. Adoption papers already signed, sending Sam to a school in California. But Jonah and we'd heard about that school. Children who go there don't come back. They die of accidents or illness within the year. Eli felt rage building cold and steady in his gut. Using the law to murder children, to sell them like cattle. It was the kind of evil that made him understand why some men took justice into their own hands. "So you took him," he said. "What else could I do?" Ruth's voice cracked. "He's 3 years old. He likes butterflies and gathering eggs, and he laughs when you tickle him. Was I supposed to let them ship him off to die?" "Ruth didn't even know me then," Jonah added. "I'd been at the home 2 months, kept my head down, planned to run soon as spring came. But when I saw her sneaking out with Sam that night, I followed, figured she'd need help." "Why?" Eli asked. Jonah shrugged. "Somebody should have helped Tommy. Should have helped all of them. I couldn't save them. But maybe I could save this one. We've been running ever since," Ruth continued, "town to town, working when we could, hiding when we couldn't. Trenholm's been tracking us. We've seen his posters in 3 towns now. Says we kidnapped Sam, that we're dangerous criminals. Says there's a reward." "How much?" $500 alive. Doesn't say anything about dead." Eli whistled low. That was serious money, enough to turn honest folks into bounty hunters. "There's more," Ruth said, quieter now. "The papers I saw, the ones about Sam's placement, they had a seal on them. Governor's seal." The pieces clicked into place in Eli's mind. A child born wrong side of the blanket to someone in the governor's circle, maybe the governor himself. Trenholm cleaning up the mess, making money on the side selling other unwanted children. And these 2 brave, foolish youngsters standing between Sam and a grave in California. "You know what you've told me makes me guilty of harboring fugitives," Eli said carefully. Ruth's chin came up. "We'll leave. Today. Just let us gather our things and—" "Sit down, girl. I'm not finished." Eli's voice was gruff but not unkind. "Also makes me guilty of standing by while children are murdered for the crime of being inconvenient. And I'll be damned if I'll carry that weight." Hope flickered in Ruth's eyes. "You mean?" "I mean you're staying put. All of you." He looked at Sam, who'd abandoned the wooden horse in favor of trying to climb into Jonah's lap. "That boy's got a target on his back for breathing while being born to the wrong people. Far as I'm concerned, that makes him exactly the kind of person worth protecting." "Trenholm won't stop," Jonah warned. "He's got the law on his side and money, and men who'll do anything for both. Then he'll find out what happens when he comes onto my land threatening my family." The word hung in the air. Family. Ruth's eyes went bright with unshed tears, and even Jonah's rigid shoulders relaxed a fraction. "But we're not—" Ruth started. "You are now," Eli said firmly. "Unless you got objections to an old soldier claiming you as his own." Sam chose that moment to toddle over to Eli, wooden horse clutched in one chubby fist. "Uncle Eli," he announced. "Horse is hungry." Uncle Eli. The title hit him like a physical blow, but a sweet one. "Is that so? Well, we'd better find him some hay then." As Sam chattered about what horses ate, Eli caught Ruth wiping her eyes with her apron. Jonah had moved from the window, some of that terrible watchfulness finally easing. "We need to be smart about this." Eli said once Sam had been distracted with some crackers to feed his wooden horse. "Trenholm knows you're in the area, or he wouldn't be sniffing around. Question is, does he know you're here specifically?" "Don't think so," Jonah said. "We were careful coming here, doubled back twice. Came through the creek to hide our tracks. Good, but he'll figure it out eventually. Man like that. He'll check every ranch, every homestead. Eli thought for a moment. We need to be ready, but we also need to seem normal. Ruth, you and Sam stay close to the house. Jonah, you and I will work the ranch as usual, but we'll keep weapons handy. I can shoot, Jonah offered quietly. Ruth, too. We learned on the trail. Good. There's an old Henry rifle in the barn, and Ruth can keep the shotgun in the kitchen. Eli stood. Decision made. We'll drill later. Make sure everyone knows what to do if trouble comes calling. The rest of the day passed in tense preparation disguised as normal routine. Eli showed Jonah where all the weapons were cached. The rifle in the barn, pistols in the house, ammunition stored strategic. Ruth reorganized the kitchen so the shotgun was always within reach but hidden from casual view. Sam, blissfully unaware, helped by carrying things back and forth, chattering about his wooden horse and the red hen he'd named Rosie. As evening fell, Eli found himself on the porch with Jonah, watching the sun paint the mountains crimson. The boy was whittling again, hands steady and sure. You did a brave thing, Eli said quietly. Following Ruth that night, most would have minded their own business. Jonah's hands stilled. You ever see something so wrong it makes your insides twist up? Like the world's gone crooked and nobody else notices? Yeah, son, I have. That's what it was like at the home. Kids disappearing, nobody asking questions, Trenholm coming and going like he owned the place. Jonah went back to whittling, each cut precise and angry. I kept thinking someone would stop it. Some adult would see and make it right. But they were all either in on it or too scared to speak. So you decided to be the someone. Jonah shrugged. Couldn't save them all. Can't even save us, probably. But Sam. He looked toward the house where Sam's laughter echoed as Ruth played some game with him. Sam deserves to grow up. Deserves to become whoever he's meant to be. Not die for someone else's shame. Eli felt a fierce pride in this boy who wasn't his son but maybe could be, given time and trust. We'll keep him safe. All of you. You got a lot of faith in an old soldier and 2 kids with stolen guns. I got faith in people who do right even when it costs them. That's rarer than gold in this territory. They sat in companionable silence as darkness crept across the valley. Inside, Ruth was singing something soft and sweet, probably getting Sam ready for bed. It was a sound Eli hadn't heard in his house for too many years. The sound of someone caring for a child, of nighttime routines and gentle comfort. He comes at night, usually, Jonah said suddenly. Trenholm likes the dark, likes people off balance and scared. If he's coming, it'll be soon. Eli nodded. Then we'd best get some rest while we can. Tomorrow we'll start drilling proper. Make sure everyone knows their positions, but tonight... He stood, joints protesting the day's work. Tonight, we're just a family having a peaceful evening. Jonah almost smiled at that. Never had one of those before. Well, you got one now. Come on. Let's see if Ruth saved us any of that apple cobbler. They went inside together, man and boy, to join their makeshift family. Outside, darkness gathered thick and full of possibility. Somewhere out there, Trenholm was hunting. But inside the warm circle of lamplight, Sam was giggling at something Ruth said, and for just this moment, they were safe. Eli knew it wouldn't last, knew that men like Trenholm didn't give up easy, especially not with money and reputation on the line. But looking at these 3 who'd claimed him as surely as he'd claimed them, he found he didn't care about the danger. He'd been dead inside for 5 years, going through the motions of living without purpose or hope. Now he had both. Had people to protect, a wrong to right, A family to defend? Let Trenholm come. Let him bring his badges and his hired guns and his twisted version of law. He'd find Eli Dawson ready. And he'd learn what happened when you threatened the only good thing an old soldier had found in too many empty years. The night settled deep and quiet around the ranch, but it was the quiet before a storm. And for the first time in memory, Eli welcomed the coming thunder. The first sign came 3 days later, fresh horse tracks along the eastern ridge, too deliberate to be casual travelers. Jonah spotted them during the morning rounds, his sharp eyes catching the pattern in the frost-touched earth. 2 riders, he reported to Eli, voice steady but tight. Stopped at the overlook, watched the house for a spell, then headed back toward town. Eli studied the tracks himself, reading them like scripture. Heavy horses, well shod, not ranch ponies or trail mounts. These were lawmen's horses or hired guns riding good stock. They're scouting, he said, getting the lay of the land before they make their move. That afternoon, while Ruth kept Sam inside with baking, the boy loved helping, though more flour ended up on him than in the bread, Eli and Jonah rode the property line, checking for more signs. They found them. Cigarette butts near the South Creek, boot prints by the old mine road, places where someone had belly crawled to get a better view of the house. They're thorough, Jonah observed, old beyond his years. Trenholm's no fool. He'll want to know every approach, every escape route. Eli pointed to the narrow canyon that cut through his land to the north. That's where I'd come from if I wanted surprise. Wind carries sound away from the house there, so we watch it extra careful. We do more than that, come on. They spent the rest of the day setting up what Eli called welcomes, not traps that would kill, but warnings that would slow. Tin cans strung on wire across the canyon approach. Piles of dry brush that would crackle underfoot. Strategic placement of tools and equipment that would force riders to funnel through predictable paths. We learned this in the war, Eli explained as they worked. Can't always stop them coming, but you can make sure they come the way you want them to. That evening, tension thick as smoke in the house. Ruth finally gave voice to what they were all thinking. Maybe we should run. Head further west. Maybe California. No. Eli's voice was firm. Running's what you've been doing, and it hasn't solved anything. Trenholm will just keep coming. Men like him don't give up, not when there's money and reputation at stake. But this is your home. We've brought danger to your door. You've brought life to my door, Eli corrected. First time in 5 years this place has felt like more than a tomb. I'm not giving that up, and I'm not letting you face this alone. Sam, playing with his wooden soldiers on the floor, looked up. Are the bad men coming, Uncle Eli? Eli knelt beside him, gentle despite the colt on his hip. Maybe. But you know what? Bad men have been coming to this ranch before, and they always leave disappointed. You just stick close to Ruth and do what she says, all right? Will you make them go away? That's the plan, partner. 2 nights later, the waiting ended. Eli woke to the faint sound of tin cans clinking, their canyon warning. He was up and dressed in seconds, rifle in hand. A soft knock at his door. Jonah, fully dressed, eyes alert. How many? Eli whispered. I can't tell yet, but they're trying to be quiet about it. They woke Ruth, who gathered Sam without a word, wrapping him in blankets and carrying him to the root cellar as they'd practiced. The boy stayed quiet, sensing the seriousness even through his sleepiness. Remember, Eli told Ruth as she descended into the hidden space, no matter what you hear, you don't come out until Jonah or I give the all clear. The call is 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks, Ruth finished. I remember the cellar door, concealed beneath a worn rug and trapdoor, closed silently. Eli and Jonah took their positions, Eli at the front window with the rifle, Jonah at the back with the Henry. They didn't have long to wait. 4 riders emerged from the pre-dawn darkness, moving slow and careful up the main approach. Even in the dim light, Eli recognized the lead rider's posture, arrogant, used to authority. Had to be Trenholm. Eli Dawson, the voice confirmed it, carrying clear in the still air. This is Deputy Marshal Trenholm. I'm here on official business. Come out and we can discuss this peaceable-like. Eli let silence answer for a long moment, then called back. Mighty early for official business, Marshal. Sun's not even thinking about rising yet. Crime doesn't keep bankers' hours, Dawson. I have reason to believe you're harboring fugitives. 2 kidnappers and a stolen child. Only children here are the ones that belong here, Eli replied. And they're sleeping, like decent folk do at this hour. Trenholm moved his horse closer, and Eli got his first good look at the man. Tall, lean, with the kind of sharp face that had never known kindness. His badge caught what little light there was, but it was his eyes that held Eli's attention. Cold, calculating, like he was figuring the price of everything he saw. I've got papers, Trenholm said. Legal warrants for Ruth Holbrook and Jonah Ward, wanted for kidnapping, and recovery orders for the boy, Samuel. Don't know any such people. That's so, because Tom Garrett at the feed store says a girl and 2 boys have been staying here. Young girl about 16, brown hair. Boy about 10, quiet-like. And a little one, maybe 3 or 4. Eli cursed inwardly. Should have known someone in town would talk for the right price. My niece and nephews, Eli said smoothly. Come to stay after their folks passed. Fever took them, left the children with no one but me. Convenient story, mind if we verify it? I do mind. This is private property, Marshal. You want to come on it? You'd better have more than talk and convenience store gossip. Trenholm's hand dropped to his sidearm, casual-like but clear in its threat. I've got all the authority I need. Now, you can make this easy. Or, the shot came from the left, shattering the kitchen window. One of Trenholm's men had circled around, trying for surprise. Jonah's Henry barked in response, and the man cried out, clutching his shoulder as he tumbled from his horse. Hey, hold fire, Trenholm shouted, but it was too late. The peaceful morning erupted into chaos. Eli dropped low as bullets peppered the window frame. He counted muzzle flashes. 3 men besides Trenholm, 1 wounded. They'd spread out, taking cover behind the water trough, the wagon, the corner of the barn. Jonah, you all right? He called. Fine, but they're trying to flank us. Sure enough, Eli saw movement toward the side of the house. These weren't ordinary deputies. They moved like men who'd done this before, coordinated and careful. Dawson, Trenholm's voice cut through the gunfire. This doesn't have to end bloody. Send out the children and we'll ride away. Go to hell. Eli fired at a shape moving behind the wagon. Heard a curse as the bullet struck wood inches from the man's head. They exchanged fire for several minutes, neither side gaining advantage. Then Eli heard what he'd been dreading. Footsteps on the roof. They're above us, he shouted to Jonah. The boy reacted instantly, firing up through the ceiling. There was a cry and the sound of someone sliding off the roof, hitting the ground hard. But the distraction cost them. The kitchen door exploded inward, kicked by a man Eli recognized, Marcus Webb, a gun for hire out of Tucson. Jonah spun to face him, but Webb was faster. The pistol rising, Eli's rifle bullet took Webb's center mass, dropping him before he could fire. But now Trenholm and his remaining man were rushing the front, and Eli's rifle was empty. He drew his Colt as Trenholm burst through the door, both men firing at once. Eli felt the bullet burn across his ribs as his own shot went wide, shattering the lamp beside Trenholm's head. They crashed together, wrestling for control of their weapons. Trenholm was younger, stronger, but Eli had learned to fight dirty in the war. He drove his knee into Trenholm's gut, used the moment of weakness to slam the man's gun hand against the doorframe. The weapon clattered away. "Jonah!" Eli yelled, grappling with Trenholm. "The other one!" But Jonah was already moving, the Henry tracking the last man as he tried to circle back to his horse. The rifle cracked once, and the man stumbled, fell, didn't get up. Trenholm got a hand free, pulled a knife from his boot. Eli caught his wrist inches from his throat, muscles straining. They rolled, crashed into the table, sent Ruth's carefully arranged dishes shattering. "You're protecting a bastard," Trenholm hissed, face twisted with effort. "A stain on important people. He's better off dead." "He's a child," Eli snarled back and found strength in his rage. He twisted hard, heard Trenholm's wrist snap. The knife fell, and Eli's fist followed, connecting solid with Trenholm's jaw. The marshal went limp, and Eli struggled to his feet, ribs screaming. Jonah stood in the doorway, rifle steady, scanning for more threats. "It's done," Eli panted. "Check the wounded carefully." They found 2 dead, Webb and the man who'd tried the roof. The one Jonah had first wounded was long gone, horse and all. The last man was gut shot, wouldn't make it to noon. Trenholm stirred as they bound his hands, hatred burning in his eyes. "You've killed yourself, Dawson. Killed federal deputies. They'll hang you for this." "The deputies?" Eli laughed, harsh and bitter. "Webb was a hired killer. These others aren't much better. You brought thugs to steal a child. Trenholm. That badge doesn't make it right." "That boy is property of the territory. Important people want him dealt with." "Important people." Eli crouched beside him. "Let me guess, someone high up got a servant girl with child, now wants the evidence gone. That about right?" Trenholm's silence was answer enough. "Well, you can tell those important people that Sam's under my protection now. Mine and folks who won't stand for children being murdered for convenience. You can't fight the whole government, Dawson. Don't have to, just have to fight the corrupt pieces of it, starting with you." Ruth's voice came from below, muffled but urgent. "Is it safe?" Eli and Jonah shared a look. Was it? They'd won this battle, but Trenholm was right. Killing federal officers, even corrupt ones, brought consequences. 3 knocks, pause, 2. Eli called. Moments later, Ruth emerged with Sam, the boy's eyes wide but trusting. He ran to Eli, small arms wrapping around his leg. "Uncle Eli's hurt," he said, pointing at the blood on Eli's shirt. "Just a scratch, partner. I've had worse." Ruth was already moving, checking the wound with gentle hands. "Needs cleaning and binding, but it's not deep." She looked at Trenholm, bound and bitter on the floor. "Is he?" "The marshal who wanted to take Sam," Eli confirmed. "He won't be taking anyone anywhere now." "You're all dead," Trenholm spat. "When I don't report in, they'll send more, 1 dozen, 2 dozen, however many it takes." "Maybe," Eli said. "Or maybe they'll decide one missing marshal and some dead hired guns aren't worth explaining, especially when word gets out about what you've really been doing." He turned to Ruth and Jonah. "Pack what we need. Food, water, ammunition, blankets. We're leaving within the hour." "Leaving?" Ruth's voice was small. "But this is your home." "Was my home. Now it's just a place." He looked at the 3 of them, his found family worth more than any building or piece of land. "We've got bigger problems now. Trenholm's not the disease, just a symptom. If we're going to keep Sam safe, really safe, we need to expose the whole rotten mess." "Or how?" Jonah asked. Eli smiled, cold and determined. By taking the fight to them, by finding proof of what they've been doing and making it public, by making it too costly for them to keep hunting one small boy. He looked down at Trenholm. You're coming with us, insurance, and maybe evidence if you decide to talk. I'll die first. Maybe, but that's your choice to make. As the sun finally began to rise, painting the mountains gold and red, they prepared to leave. Eli took one last look around the home he'd shared with Sarah and Jake, the place where he'd mourned them, the place where he'd found reason to live again. It hurt to leave, but not as much as he'd expected. Home, he was learning, wasn't walls and land. It was the people you'd fight for, die for, protect with everything you had. You ready? He asked his small, fierce family. Ruth nodded, Sam in her arms. Jonah stood straight, rifle in hand. No longer a boy, but not yet a man, something in between, forged by necessity and courage. Then let's go. We've got corruption to expose and a boy to keep safe. They rode out as the morning bloomed full, leaving behind 2 graves and a bound marshal. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, probably death, but also hope, also purpose, also family. And for Eli Dawson, that was enough to keep riding toward whatever came next. They rode hard through the morning, taking the old Apache trail that wound through the mountains like a snake's path. Trenholm, hands bound and tied to his saddle, cursed them steady until Jonah stuffed a bandana in his mouth. Sam rode with Ruth, quiet and watchful, sensing the danger even if he didn't understand it. By noon, Eli called a halt in a box canyon he'd used for hunting. High walls, good sight lines, fresh water from a spring. More important, only one way in or out unless you were a mountain goat. They'll be coming, Eli said, scanning their back trail with his field glasses. Trenholm's men will have found the bodies by now. How many? Ruth asked, settling Sam in the shade with some biscuits and water. However many Trenholm brought to town. My guess, at least 4 more, maybe 6. He lowered the glasses. Men like him don't travel light when there's dirty work to be done. They set up camp minimal, no fire, despite Sam's shivers in the mountain air. Ruth wrapped him in blankets while Jonah took first watch at the canyon mouth. Eli tended his ribs, the graze burning worse now that the fight fever had faded. Let me, Ruth said, bringing the medical supplies. Her hands were gentle but sure as she cleaned and bound the wound. You've done this before. My mama taught me. Before the fever took her, she was a midwife. Said healing hands were worth more than gold in the territories. Smart woman. She was, Ruth's voice went soft. Would have liked you, I think. She always said to judge a man by what he'll sacrifice for others, not what he'll take for himself. Trenholm made a muffled sound of derision through his gag. Eli ignored him, focusing instead on Ruth's steady hands, the way she bit her lip when concentrating. So young to be carrying such weight. Ruth, he started, but Jonah's whistle cut him off, their agreed signal for riders approaching. They moved fast, practiced now. Ruth and Sam back into a cleft in the rocks, covered with brush, Eli and Jonah taking positions with clear fields of fire. Trenholm they left tied in plain sight, bait for whatever was coming. The riders appeared 20 minutes later, 4 of them, moving cautious but determined. Eli recognized the lead rider, Marcus Webb's brother, Daniel. Made sense. Blood called to blood, and the Webbs were known for vengeance. Trenholm, Daniel Webb called, stopping just outside effective rifle range. You alive in there? Eli pulled the gag from Trenholm's mouth. Tell them to ride on, he said quietly. No more blood needs spilling today. Trenholm spat. Webb! They're dug in like ticks. The woman and brats are... Eli stuffed the gag back, but the damage was done. Webb and his men spread out, taking cover behind rocks and scrub. "Hey, Dawson," Webb's voice echoed off the canyon walls. "You killed my brother." "Your brother was trying to kill a child," Eli called back. "He made his choice. That badge-wearing bastard paid good money. $500, he said, split 4 ways. That's blood money," Eli interrupted. "For murdering a 3-year-old boy whose only crime was being born. That the legacy you want, Webb?" Silence for a moment. Then, "Money's money, and dead lawmen bring more trouble than any of us need. Send out Trenholm and we'll call it square." Eli considered. Giving up Trenholm might buy them time. But these men had come for Sam. They wouldn't stop just because their paymaster was gone. "Can't do it, Webb. You want him, come and take him." The first shots came fast, peppering the rocks around their position. Eli and Jonah held fire, waiting. Ammunition was precious, and they were outnumbered. "Hey there!" Jonah spotted movement to their left. His Henry cracked once, and a man cried out, clutching his leg as he fell behind a boulder. "Good shot," Eli murmured. "Now they know we can reach them." The firefight settled into a deadly pattern. Webb's men would move, trying to find better positions. Eli and Jonah would fire just enough to drive them back. But the mathematics were against them. 4 men could flank better than 2 could defend. "Behind us!" Ruth's voice sharp with fear. Eli spun to see a 5th man, one they'd missed, climbing down the canyon wall. He'd found a way the mountain goats used was nearly to their level. His gun was already rising toward Ruth and Sam's hiding spot. Eli's shot took him in the chest, but the man's finger was already squeezing the trigger. The bullet whined off the rocks inches from where Sam crouched, and the boy's terrified scream echoed through the canyon. "Sam!" Ruth pulled him deeper into cover as Jonah fired repeatedly at the other attackers, keeping them pinned. But now their position was revealed. Webb's men concentrated their fire on the cleft where Ruth and Sam hid, bullets chipping stone into deadly fragments. "We have to move," Eli decided. "Jonah, covering fire!" They laid down a barrage, and Eli sprinted for Ruth and Sam. He scooped up the boy, Ruth right behind him, making for better cover. They'd almost made it when Ruth cried out, stumbling. "I'm shot," she gasped, hand coming away red from her side. "Hey, keep moving." Eli shoved her behind a large boulder, Sam crying now, calling for his Ruthie. The situation was deteriorating fast. Ruth was hit, their ammunition running low, and Webb's men were closing in. Eli made a hard choice. "Webb," he shouted, "let's settle this, you and me." Eli, "No," Jonah protested, but Eli was already standing, hands away from his weapons. Daniel Webb emerged from cover, cautious but curious. "What are you proposing, Dawson?" "Single combat. You win. You take Trenholm and ride away. I win. You and your men leave us be." "And the bounty?" "There is no bounty, not really. Just blood money from a corrupt marshal trying to murder a child." Eli pulled a paper from his pocket, one of the documents they'd taken from Trenholm. "Got the proof right here. Shows Sam's real parentage. Why Trenholm wants him dead? You want to be part of killing a toddler because his grandfather's the governor?" Webb's men had emerged slightly, listening. One of them, an older man with graying whiskers, spoke up. "Governor Mercer's grandson?" "His bastard grandson," Eli confirmed. "Born to a servant girl the governor's son got with child. Now they want the boy dead to keep their secret. That's what you're fighting for. That's what Marcus died for." The silence stretched taut. Then Webb laughed, bitter and short. "Don't matter whose grandson he is, my brother's still dead. Because he chose to be a child killer for money," Eli said harshly. "You want to follow him down that path?" Webb's hand hovered near his gun, the moment balanced on a knife's edge. Then one of his men spoke again, the older one. I'm out. Dan came for a bounty hunt, not child murder, especially not the governor's blood, bastard or not. That's trouble we don't need. Hobbs, you yellow! But another man was already backing away too. He's right, Webb. This stinks worse than a week-old corpse. I got kids of my own. Webb's face twisted with rage and grief. Marcus is dead, and killing more won't bring him back, Eli said quietly. Let it go. Webb, take your men and ride away. Live to see another sunset. For a moment, it seemed Webb might listen. His shoulders sagged, the fight going out of him. Then Trenholm, working his gag loose, screamed, $1,000, I'll make it 1,000 each. Kill them all and I'll... Webb's gun cleared leather fast, but Eli was faster. The shots came so close together they sounded like one. Webb spun and fell, his bullet going wide, but Trenholm jerked in his bonds, a red stain spreading across his chest, not from Eli's gun or Webb's, but from Jonah's Henry. The boy had made his choice, protecting their family the only way he could. No! Ruth tried to rise, to reach Jonah, but her wound sent her back down. The remaining outlaws stood frozen, guns half drawn, uncertain. The older one, Hobbs, raised his hands slowly. We're done here, he said. Dan's dead. Trenholm's dead. No money. No point. He looked at his companions. Anyone disagrees, they can stay and join them. No one disagreed. They collected Webb's body in silence, leaving Trenholm where he lay. As they mounted up, Hobbs paused. For what it's worth, Dawson, I believe you, about the boy, about all of it. He spat tobacco juice. World's got enough cruelty without adding to it. You might want to head deep into Mexico. Governor's Reach ain't so long there. Then they were gone, dust settling in their wake. Eli rushed to Ruth, Jonah already there, pressing his shirt against her wound. The bullet had gone through clean, missing anything vital, but she'd lost blood. Hey, did I? Jonah's voice was small, staring at Trenholm's still form. I killed him. You saved us, Eli said firmly. He was going for his hidden gun, would have shot me in the back. You did what needed doing. But Jonah's hands shook as he helped tend Ruth. Killing changed a person, no matter how justified. Eli knew that weight, carried it still from the war. Sam crawled out from the rocks, tears streaming. Ruthie hurt? I'm okay, baby, Ruth managed, though her face was white as desert bone. Just need to rest a spell. They made camp there in the canyon. No choice now. Ruth couldn't ride, and darkness was coming. Eli built a small fire. Risk be damned. Ruth needed warmth, and Sam needed comfort. As Ruth slept, dosed with whiskey and willow bark, Eli found Jonah standing over Trenholm's body. He was evil, the boy said. Hurt kids, sold them, would have killed Sam. So why do I feel so empty, sick, like you've lost something you can't name? Jonah nodded. Because you're a good man. Jonah Ward. Bad men kill easy and sleep sound. Good men kill when they must and carry it forever. Eli put a hand on the boy's shoulder. That weight you feel? It means your soul's still clean, even if your hands ain't. They buried Trenholm in a shallow grave, no words said over it. The man deserved none. But Eli noticed Jonah pause at the graveside, perhaps saying his own prayer for Trenholm or for himself. Eli couldn't say. That night, as they kept watch over Ruth and Sam, Eli pulled out the papers they'd taken from Trenholm's saddlebags. Documents, letters, enough proof to damn Governor Mercer and several other territorial officials. What now? Jonah asked, studying the papers by firelight. Now we get Ruth healed up, then we decide Mexico like Hobbs suggested, or... Eli looked at the sleeping forms of Ruth and Sam, thought of all the other children sold and disappeared. thought of corrupt men using badges to commit murder. Or we finish what Trenholm started, but for the right reasons. We take these papers to someone who can use them, expose the whole rotten system. That's dangerous, more dangerous than running. Yes. Eli met Jonah's steady gaze. But sometimes a man's got to stand and fight, not for himself, but for those who can't. Jonah was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. Ruth will want to fight. She's got that fire in her. What about you? The boy, young man, really, blooded now in battle, looked at Sam sleeping peaceful despite everything. Then at Ruth, pale but breathing steady. They're my family, Quinn. Where they go, I go. What they fight, I fight. Eli felt a fierce pride. Then we fight, but smart, careful. We've got proof now, and proof is more powerful than bullets if used right. The fire crackled between them, pushing back the dark. Somewhere in that darkness, powerful men plotted and schemed, thinking themselves untouchable. They were about to learn different. A wounded girl, a blooded boy, a hunted child, and an old soldier with nothing left to lose but everything to fight for. It wasn't much of an army, but Eli had seen smaller forces change the world, when their cause was just and their hearts were true. The real war was just beginning. The trading post at Northridge Station squatted on the landscape like a mud dauber's nest, all adobe walls and suspicious shadows. They'd ridden 2 days to reach it. Ruth strong enough to sit a horse but still pale as winter moonlight. Eli didn't like stopping here. Too many eyes, too many questions. But Sam's cough had returned with the mountain cold, and they needed medicine. Keep your hat low, Eli murmured to Ruth as they dismounted. Jonah, you stay with the horses. Anything feels wrong. You light out with Sam and don't look back. The boy nodded, understanding the weight of the responsibility. He'd aged years in the days since the canyon fight. The softness burned out of him by necessity. Inside the trading post, the air hung thick with tobacco smoke and the smell of preserved meat. A few men lounged at rough tables, playing cards and nursing whiskey. They looked up as Eli entered, eyes tracking him like wolves watching a stranger in their territory. The proprietor, a whip-thin man named Elias Cord, barely glanced up from his ledger. Help you? Need medicine, willow bark, honey, whiskey if you got it, and any tonic for lung fever in children. That got Cord's attention. His eyes sharpened. Children, you say? Didn't know you had any youngsters out at your place. Dawson. Family come to visit, Eli said evenly. Sister's kids. That's so? Cord reached under the counter and Eli tensed, hand drifting to his Colt. But the man only produced a letter, sealed and official looking. Speaking of family, this came for a Ruth Holbrook. Station manager didn't know any such person, but seeing as how you got visiting kin, some. Eli took the letter carefully, like it might bite. The paper was fine quality, the seal unfamiliar. I'll see she gets it. You do that. Cord's smile was knowing. Medicine'll be $2 and $3 if you want the good whiskey. Eli paid without haggling, eager to be gone. But as he turned to leave, one of the card players spoke up. I heard there was some trouble out your way. Dawson, dead marshal, they're saying. First I've heard of it, Eli replied, not turning. Been busy with the ranch. Funny thing, though. Description of the folks involved sounds mighty like a man with 3 youngsters. Girl about 16, boy about 10, little one no more than 4. Now Eli did turn, meeting the speaker's gaze steady. The man was young, trying to look dangerous with a tied-down gun and 3 days of stubble. Lots of families match that description, Eli said quietly. Man should be careful about the accusations he makes. The younger man's hand twitched toward his gun, but his partner, older, wiser, put a restraining hand on his arm. Leave it be, Tom. Man's just buying medicine. Eli nodded to the older man and left, feeling eyes on his back all the way to the door. Outside, he found Jonah ready to bolt, hands white-knuckled on the reins. Trouble? Maybe we're leaving. Now. They rode hard for an hour, putting distance between them and potential pursuit, before Eli called a halt in a grove of cottonwoods. Ruth was swaying in her saddle, the ride having taken its toll. "We should have kept going," she protested as Eli helped her down. "You need rest, and I need to check something." He pulled out the letter. "This came for you, for Ruth Holbrook specifically." Ruth went very still. Nobody knows that name except who? She took the letter with trembling hands, broke the seal. As she read, her face went from pale to ashen. Wordlessly, she handed it to Eli. "Miss Holbrook, you do not know me, but I know of you and your noble efforts regarding the child Samuel. I write with information that may preserve all your lives, though it puts mine at considerable risk. And the boy is indeed who you suspected, the natural son of James Mercer, the governor's eldest. The mother was Maria Santos, a housemaid who died in childbirth. The governor ordered the child sent to the foundling home, supposedly for proper care. But I have learned the truth. Papers were signed ordering the boy's quiet disposal once he reached an age where his resemblance to his father became apparent. A Deputy Marshal Trenholm was tasked with this grim duty, along with the systematic selling of other inconvenient children. I enclosed documents proving this, taken at great risk from the governor's own files. Be warned, Trenholm's death has not ended the threat. The governor has engaged new hunters, more dangerous than the last. They have orders to eliminate all witnesses, yourself, the boy Jonah, and anyone who has aided you. There is no sanctuary in the territory while Mercer remains in power. I suggest you seek the aid of certain journalists in San Bray who have opposed the governor's corruption. Arden Lott of the Territorial Tribune has both courage and printing press. Evidence properly presented might save where guns cannot. I trust few. The governor's reach is long, his conscience absent. Signed, a friend to justice. Eli read it twice, then examined the enclosed documents. They were damning. Orders for Sam's death in the governor's own hand. Lists of children relocated from the foundling home. Records of payments to Trenholm and others. "This is bigger than we thought," he said quietly. "A friend to justice," Ruth repeated. "Who would risk this?" "Is someone close to the governor, close enough to access these papers." Eli folded the documents carefully. "Could be a trap. Or our salvation," Jonah said. He'd been reading over Eli's shoulder, face grim. "If these are real." "They're real," Ruth said with certainty. "Look at Sam." The boy was playing with sticks nearby, building something only he understood. But in the afternoon light, Eli could see what he'd missed before, the shape of his nose, the set of his jaw, features that would indeed become more apparent with age, features that would mark him clearly as a Mercer. "He deserves to live," Ruth said fiercely, "to grow up and become whoever he's meant to be." "Then we go to San Bray," Eli decided. "Find this Arden Lott, see if he's as brave as our mysterious friend thinks." "It's 3 days' ride," Jonah pointed out. "Through open country than if they're hunting us. Then we travel at night, rest during the day, take the old smuggler's routes." Eli had run those routes before, years ago, for reasons he didn't care to remember. "It'll be hard going." "When hasn't it been?" Ruth asked with a weak smile. They prepared to move again, but Sam's cough chose that moment to return, harsh and rattling. Ruth held him as he struggled for breath, whispering soothing words that didn't hide her fear. "The medicine?" Eli said, quickly preparing a dose. "The honey and whiskey went down easy. The willow bark tea less so, but Sam managed it. "He's getting worse," Ruth said quietly while Sam dozed against her shoulder. "The constant running, the cold nights, the fear, it's wearing on him." Eli stroked Sam's hair gently. "All the more reason to end this, one way or another." They traveled through the night, navigating by stars and memory. The smugglers' routes were treacherous, narrow paths through ravines, hidden ways known only to those who dealt in shadows. But they were also empty of pursuit, at least for now. By dawn, they'd reached an abandoned miner's shack Eli remembered from the old days. It wasn't much, 4 walls and a roof that leaked starlight, but it was shelter. They collapsed inside, exhausted beyond measure. "I'll take first watch," Jonah offered, but Eli could see the boy was dead on his feet. "Rest, all of you. I've got some thinking to do anyway." As the others slept, Eli studied the documents by lantern light. Names, dates, amounts paid, a careful record of corruption that reached from the governor's mansion to every corner of the territory. Judges, marshals, businessmen, all connected by greed and complicity. But it was one name that stopped him cold. Major Harrison Blackwood, late of the Union Army, now the governor's special investigator. Eli knew that name, knew the man behind it. They'd served together briefly, before Blackwood's methods became too much even for war. If Blackwood was hunting them, they were in more danger than he'd thought. The man was brilliant, ruthless, and utterly without conscience. He'd tracked them to the ends of the earth for the right price. A soft sound made him look up. Ruth stood in the doorway, pain clear in how she held herself but determination clearer in her eyes. "I can't sleep. Hurts too much when I lie down." She eased herself onto a crate beside him. "What aren't you telling us? What makes you think?" "You've got that look. Same one my pa used to get when the banker came calling and we didn't have the payment." She studied the papers. "What did you find?" "Harrison Blackwood. He's coming for us." "You know him?" "Knew him. In the war. Man's got a gift for hunting and no soul to trouble him about what he does when he catches his prey." Eli rubbed his face, feeling every one of his years. "If I'd known he was involved, you'd still have taken us in," Ruth said softly. "Because you're a good man, Eli Dawson. Because you look at Sam and see a child worth saving, not an inconvenience to be eliminated. Being good doesn't stop bullets, doesn't keep children safe from men like Blackwood. No, but it makes fighting them worthwhile." She touched his hand, brief but warm. "We're going to win this. Have to believe that." "Why? Because justice prevails, because good triumphs?" Eli's laugh was bitter. "I've seen too much to believe in fairy tales. Ruth, not because of justice, because of them." She nodded toward where Jonah and Sam slept, curled together like puppies. "Because Jonah's already lost too much to lose more. Because Sam deserves to see his 4th birthday. Because we've come too far to quit now." Eli looked at her, really looked wounded, exhausted, probably terrified, though she'd never show it, but unbroken, unbowed, still fighting for children who weren't even hers by blood. "Your parents raised you right," he said quietly. "They raised me to stand up, to protect those who can't protect themselves, and even when it costs everything." She smiled, sad but real. "Guess that's why I couldn't leave Sam to his fate, why Jonah couldn't leave us to ours, why you couldn't turn away 3 strangers at your door. A bunch of fools, the lot of us. Hey, maybe, but fools' errands sometimes change the world." They sat in companionable silence as dawn crept across the desert. Somewhere out there, Blackwood was coming. The governor was plotting. Men with badges and guns were following their trail. But here, in this moment, they were together. A family forged by choice and circumstance, bound by love and determination. It might not be enough. Probably wouldn't be. But as Sam stirred in his sleep, mumbling something about red chickens and Uncle Eli, Ruth was right about one thing. It made the fighting worthwhile. "We should wake them soon," Ruth said. "Long road to San Bray. Let them sleep a bit longer. Road'll be there when they're ready." She nodded, understanding. These quiet moments were precious. Maybe the last piece they'd know. Best to savor them while they could. The sun rose full, painting the desert in shades of gold and promise. And in an abandoned shack in the middle of nowhere, 4 souls prepared to face whatever came next. Together. San Bray sprawled across the valley like a drunk man's promise, all false fronts and crooked intentions. But somewhere in those dusty streets lay their hope. The office of the Territorial Tribune and its editor, Ardan Lott. They entered town at dusk, when honest folks were heading home and less honest ones were just stirring. Eli had traded horses at a ranch outside town, swapping their tired mounts for fresh ones and changing their appearance as best they could. Ruth wore men's clothing, her hair tucked under a wide-brimmed hat. Sam rode with Eli, wrapped in a scrape like a Mexican child. Only Jonah looked like himself. But then, one boy looked much like another in the fading light. The Tribune office sat between a saloon and an undertaker's, fitting neighbors for a newspaper that specialized in uncomfortable truths. Light spilled from its windows despite the hour, and they could hear the rhythmic clank of printing press machinery. "Eat wait here," Eli told the others, but Ruth shook her head. "We go together. If this is a trap, better we face it as one." Eli couldn't argue with that logic. They tied their horses and entered, Sam clinging to Ruth's neck, half asleep but mercifully quiet. The office was chaos made manifest, papers stacked to the ceiling, ink stains on every surface, the massive printing press dominating the back wall like some mechanical god. At a desk in the corner sat a man who could only be Ardan Lott. He was smaller than Eli expected, with thinning hair and spectacles perched on a nose that had been broken more than once. Ink stained his fingers and shirt cuffs, and he wrote with the focused intensity of a man racing against time. "We're closed," he said without looking up. "Come back tomorrow if you want to place an advertisement." "We're not here for advertising, Mr. Lott," Eli said. "We're here about Governor Mercer." The scratching pen stopped. Lott looked up slowly, taking in the travel-worn group with sharp intelligence. His eyes lingered on Sam, something like recognition flickering across his face. "And who might you be?" "The people Trenholm was hunting, the ones with proof of what the governor's been doing." Lott stood carefully, like a man approaching a spooked horse. "Proof, you say? That's a dangerous word in this town. Friend. Gets people hurt. Gets print shops burned." "Already been hurt," Ruth said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Already been burned out of one home. But we've got documents, orders, names and dates, and enough evidence to see Mercer hanged for what he's done." "Show me." Eli hesitated, then pulled out the packet of papers. Lott took them to the light, reading with increasing excitement. His hands began to shake. "Mother of God," he breathed. "These are... Do you know what these are?" "Death warrants for children," Jonah said flatly, "including Sam here." Lott looked at the boy again, and this time the recognition was clear. "The Santos child. I heard rumors, but..." He set the papers down reverently. "You're either very brave or very foolish bringing him here." "Both," Eli admitted. "But we're out of options, and question is, are you brave enough to print this?" Lott laughed, short and bitter. "I've been trying to expose Mercer for 3 years. He's had me beaten, my press damaged, my advertisers threatened. But this, he gestured at the documents. This is evidence even he can't make disappear, not if it's spread wide enough. Then you'll do it? I'll do more than that. I'll print a special edition, 5,000 copies. We'll flood the territory before Mercer knows what hit him. Lot's eyes gleamed with the fervor of a man seeing vindication within reach. But it'll take time, and you'll need somewhere safe to wait. I know where's safe, Ruth said, not with Blackwood hunting us. Lot's face went pale. Harrison Blackwood, the butcher of Bent Creek. Same one, Eli confirmed. You know him? Know of him. He found the Garrett brothers last year when what was left wouldn't fill a feed sack. Lot thought quickly. There's a place, Mission San Salvador, run by Sister Mercy. She's no friend to the governor. He seized church lands for his cronies. She'll shelter you. For how long? 2 days, maybe 3. I'll need that long to set type, print, and distribute. Lot was already moving, gathering supplies. My assistant and I will work through the night. By Sunday morning, everyone in the territory will know the truth. A sound from the street made them all freeze, horses moving fast. Eli peered through the window and cursed. Riders, 6 of them, coming this way. I backdoor, Lot said urgently. Through the alley, left at the cantina, straight to the mission. Go! They fled through the cluttered back room, Sam whimpering at the sudden movement. The alley was dark, garbage strewn, barely wide enough for a horse. Behind them, they heard boots on the Tribune's front steps, harsh voices demanding entry. Hey, this way, Jonah hissed, leading them through the maze of back streets. The boy had an uncanny ability to find paths in the dark, like some half-wild creature. They reached the mission as bells were calling evening prayers. It rose from the dusty streets like a ship from a sea of sin. White walls, red tile roof, a haven of peace in a town built on violence. Sister Mercy met them at the gate. She was not what Eli expected, tall, strong-featured, with calloused hands that spoke of hard work. Her age was impossible to guess, could have been 40 or 60, with the kind of face that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. Mr. Lot sent word, she said simply, to come quickly. She led them through the courtyard, past the chapel where voices rose in Spanish hymns, to a small building that might have been a storehouse. Inside were simple beds, water, food. You'll be safe here, Sister Mercy said. The governor's men don't enter consecrated ground, and not yet, anyway. We're grateful, Ruth said, sagging onto a bed with Sam. Don't be grateful, be careful. The nun's eyes were knowing. I've hidden others from the governor's justice. Some made it to safety, some didn't. Blackwood has ways of finding people that seem almost supernatural. You know him too? Eli asked. I knew his wife before he killed her. Sister Mercy crossed herself. That was before he became the governor's dog, when he was just a violent drunk with a badge. Now he's worse, sober and focused. She left them with that cheerful thought. They settled in as best they could. Sam's cough returning with the evening chill. Ruth tended him while Jonah kept watch at the small window. You think Lot will really print it? Jonah asked. He's got the fever, Eli said. Seen it before in Crusaders, and they'd rather die with the truth than live with lies. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Ruth said. She'd finally got Sam settled, the boys breathing easier with the medicine taking effect. For any of us. The night passed slowly. They took turns watching, sleeping, comforting Sam when his dreams turned dark. Around midnight, they heard horses in the street outside, saw torches moving through the town, searching. They're checking everywhere, Jonah reported, but they're passing the mission by, for now, Eli muttered. He didn't trust Blackwood to respect Sanctuary forever. Dawn brought the smell of smoke. From their window, they could see black clouds rising from the direction of the Tribune office. No, Ruth breathed. They burned it, and they burned the press. But an hour later, Sister Mercy appeared with surprising news. Mr. Lott anticipated this. He moved his operation to 3 different locations during the night. The office they burned was empty except for old equipment. She smiled, a warrior's grin. The special edition is already being printed. By noon, it'll be on every street corner. Hope bloomed in Ruth's eyes. Then we've won? Not yet, Eli said. Mercer won't go down easy, and when that paper hits the streets, he'll know we're here. He'll come with everything he's got. Let him come, Sister Mercy said calmly. This mission has stood for 60 years. It's survived Apache raids, Mexican wars, and American conquest. One corrupt governor won't bring it down. But Eli wasn't so sure. He'd seen what cornered men would do to protect their power, and Mercer had a lot to lose. The morning stretched taut as they waited. Sam played quietly with wooden blocks Sister Mercy brought, building towers and knocking them down with solemn concentration. Ruth mended clothes with supplies from the mission, her hands steady despite everything. Jonah cleaned weapons, checked ammunition, prepared for war. Just before noon, they heard it, newsboys crying in the streets, their voices carrying even to the mission. Extra, extra, governor's shameful secret revealed. Children sold and murdered, evidence of corruption. It's done, Ruth said softly. Whatever happens now, the truth is out. Eli watched from the window as people gathered in the streets, passing newspapers, reading with growing outrage. He saw prominent citizens he recognized, their faces shifting from disbelief to anger. The governor had made enemies over the years, seized lands, rigged contracts, destroyed rivals. Now they smelled blood in the water. Look, Jonah pointed, riders from the governor's mansion. A dozen men, armed and angry, galloping through the streets. At their head rode a figure Eli recognized even at a distance, Harrison Blackwood. Time hadn't softened him any. If anything, he looked harder, like a blade honed too sharp. They're heading for the Tribune, Ruth said. No, Eli's voice was grim. They already know it's empty, that they're coming here. Sure enough, the riders wheeled toward the mission. Sister Mercy appeared at their door, face set in determined lines. To the chapel, she ordered. Quickly, even Blackwood won't violate the altar. They ran across the courtyard as the mission bells began to ring, not calling to prayer but sounding alarm. Other sisters emerged, forming a living wall between the fugitives and the approaching threat. The chapel was cool, dim, scented with incense and age. They huddled near the altar as footsteps echoed outside. The doors burst open and Blackwood strode in like he owned the place. He'd aged hard, face like carved granite, eyes like winter. He wore black from head to toe, silver star on his chest proclaiming his authority. Behind him came his men, hands on guns. "Oh, Sister Mercy," Blackwood said, voice cultured and cold. "I believe you're harboring fugitives." "This is God's house," Sister Mercy replied, standing between him and the altar. "All are welcome who seek sanctuary. Even murderers, even kidnappers." Blackwood's eyes found them despite the shadows. "Mr. Dawson, it's been years. I heard you'd gone soft, playing rancher. Seems I heard wrong." "Blackwood," Eli stepped forward, hand on his gun. "Still doing other men's dirty work, I see." "I enforce the law. These 3 are wanted for murder and kidnapping. The boy is a ward of the territory, stolen from lawful custody." The boy was marked for death. Ruth spoke up, clutching Sam tight. "We saved him." You stole him and now you'll hang for it. Blackwood smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. All of you. Even the boy Jonah. Old enough to swing, I think. Over my dead body, Eli growled. If necessary, Blackwood's hand moved to his gun. I have legal authority to... Your authority is based on lies. The voice rang from the chapel entrance. Ardon Lot stood there, clothes singed, face smudged with soot, but triumphant. Behind him crowded townspeople, newspapers clutched in their hands. The people know the truth now. Blackwood, about the governor's grandson, about the children sold from the foundling home, about Deputy Marshal Trenholm's death squads. Lot stepped forward, and the crowd followed. Your authority ends where justice begins. Justice? Blackwood laughed. You think a newspaper changes anything? I have orders. From a governor who'll be in federal custody by week's end. Lot interrupted. I sent copies to the federal marshal in Tucson, the territorial attorney, every newspaper from here to San Francisco. It's over. More people pushed into the chapel. Eli recognized merchants, ranchers, even a judge who'd always seemed in Mercer's pocket. The tide had turned. Stand down, Blackwood, the judge said. I'm ordering an immediate investigation into these allegations. Until it's complete, these people are under the protection of the court. Blackwood's face never changed, but Eli saw his hand twitch. The man was calculating odds, measuring chances. Could he kill them all before the crowd stopped him? Maybe. But what would be the point? The truth was already spreading like wildfire. This isn't over, Blackwood said finally. Oh no, the law serves justice, not corruption, Sister Mercy said firmly. Now get out of my chapel. For a moment, violence hung in the air like smoke. Then Blackwood turned on his heel and strode out, his men following reluctantly. The crowd parted to let them pass, but their murmurs followed, angry, accusing, demanding answers. In the sudden quiet that followed, Sam spoke up. Are the bad men gone, Ruthie? Yes, baby, Ruth said, tears streaming down her face. They're gone. But Eli watched through the window as Blackwood and his men rode away. The battle was won, but something in Blackwood's bearing said the war wasn't over. Men like him didn't accept defeat easily. Still, for now, they were safe. The truth was out, spreading through the territory like a cleansing fire. Governor Mercer's reign of corruption was ending, brought down by a 3-year-old boy and those brave enough to protect him. What now? Jonah asked, looking older than his years, but somehow lighter too. Now we wait, Eli said. Let justice take its course. And maybe, just maybe, we can stop running and start living. Ruth smiled through her tears, holding Sam close. I'd like that. A real home. A real family. You've got both, Eli assured her, for as long as you want them. Outside, the mission bells rang again. Not in alarm this time, but in celebration. The truth had set them free, at least for today. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for now, in this sacred space, they were together and alive and victorious. It was enough. The morning Governor Mercer came to San Bray. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. 3 days had passed since the Tribune's special edition. 3 days of growing outrage as the truth spread like prairie fire. Federal marshals had arrived from Tucson. Judges were convening special sessions, and the governor's supporters were abandoning him like rats from a burning barn. But Mercer wasn't going down without a fight. Eli watched from the mission's bell tower as the governor's procession entered town. 20 armed men, badges gleaming, surrounding a black carriage with territorial seals. At their head rode not Blackwood, but Marshal Thomas Cray. Newly appointed and eager to prove himself. He's going to make a show of it, Sister Mercy said, joining Eli at his vantage point. Public execution, probably. Restore his authority through fear. Let him try. Eli's voice was grim. The people won't stand for it. Not now. Below in the courtyard, Ruth was teaching Sam his letters, scratching them in the dirt with a stick. The boy's laughter carried up to them, innocent and pure. Jonah sat nearby, whittling as always, but his eyes tracked every entrance and exit. They've set up a gallows, Sister Mercy observed, pointing to the town square, and they're gathering people, forcing them from their homes and businesses. Sure enough, Mercer's men were herding citizens toward the square, rifle butts encouraging the reluctant. Eli could see Ardan Lot among them, head bloodied but unbowed. He's going to hang Lot, Eli realized. Make an example of him, try to stuff the truth back in its box. Then we stop him. How? 20 armed men, federal authority. False authority, Sister Mercy corrected. Based on forged documents and murdered witnesses, the people know that now. They just need someone to remind them they outnumber the oppressors. She turned to go, purpose in every step. Prepare your family, Mr. Dawson. This ends today, one way or another. Within an hour, the town square was packed. Mercer stood on the gallows platform, still playing the righteous leader. He was a handsome man in his 60s, silver-haired and commanding, the kind who could make lies sound like gospel truth. Citizens of San Bray, his voice boomed across the square. You have been deceived by malicious falsehoods, poisoned by the ravings of a bitter journalist who sought to destroy the prosperity we've built together. Jeers rose from the crowd, quickly silenced by rifle butts and drawn pistols. This man, Mercer gestured to Lot, hands bound, noose around his neck. Printed lies about your government, about me, about the very foundations of our territory. The penalty for sedition is death. The penalty for murdering children is worse. The voice rang out clear and strong. Ruth stood at the edge of the square, Sam in her arms, Jonah beside her. The crowd parted, murmuring as they walked forward. Stop them, Mercer ordered, but his men hesitated. Shooting a woman holding a child in front of hundreds of witnesses was different from back-alley brutality. This is Sam, Ruth announced, lifting the boy higher so all could see. Samuel Santos Mercer, grandson of the man who ordered his death, grandson of the man who sold your children to slavery and worse. The crowd stirred, anger building like thunder. Mercer's face had gone pale, seeing his shame made flesh before him. Lies, he managed. That child is... Your blood, Ruth interrupted. Look at him. Look at his face and tell these people he's not your son's child. And they did look. In the morning light, Sam's resemblance to the Mercer line was undeniable. The nose, the jaw, the eyes that marked him as clearly as any birth certificate. Even if he were, Mercer said, recovering some composure, bastards have no claim on life? Eli stepped from the crowd, hand resting on his Colt. Children have no claim on not being murdered for your convenience? Dawson, Mercer's voice dripped venom. The killer of federal officers, Marshall Cray, arrest that man. Cray started forward, but the crowd closed ranks. Men and women who'd lost children to the foundling home, who'd seen their neighbors disappear, who'd lived in fear of Mercer's corruption for too long. Stand aside, Cray ordered, but his voice lacked conviction. No. The speaker was Judge Harriman, the one who'd seemed in Mercer's pocket. I've read the evidence, reviewed the documents. Governor Mercer, I'm placing you under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and corruption of office. You have no authority. I have the authority of law, Harriman said firmly. Real law, not the twisted version you've been peddling. Mercer's men shifted nervously, looking between their employer and the angry crowd. The smart ones were already calculating their chances of switching sides. "Kill them," Mercer snarled. "Kill them all if you have to." That was his mistake. The crowd surged forward with a roar. Mercer's men, faced with hundreds of furious citizens, broke. Some threw down their weapons, others ran. A few tried to fight and were overwhelmed in seconds. In the chaos, one figure moved with deadly purpose, Blackwood, appearing from nowhere, gun drawn and aimed at Sam. "If I can't have order," he said coldly, "I'll have satisfaction." Eli's hand moved, fast as thought. The Colt cleared leather and spoke once. Blackwood staggered, looking down at the spreading red stain on his chest with something almost like surprise. "Faster than you used to be, Dawson," he said, and fell. On the platform, Mercer grabbed for Cray's gun. They struggled, the younger man's strength against the older's desperation. The gun went off, the sound sharp in the morning air. When the smoke cleared, Mercer lay still, shot by his own hand in the struggle. Poetic justice, perhaps, or just the violent end of a violent man. "Cut him down!" someone shouted, and hands reached a free lot from the noose. The journalist sagged but stood, voice hoarse but unbroken. "The truth," he rasped, "will always outlive the lie." The crowd cheered, the sound rolling across the square like freedom itself. Ruth lowered Sam, who immediately ran to Eli, small arms wrapping around his legs. "Uncle Eli, you stopped the bad man." "We all did, partner, every one of us." In the aftermath, as federal marshals took charge and began the long process of untangling Mercer's web of corruption, Eli found himself standing with his makeshift family. Ruth, pale but proud. Jonah, finally allowing himself to be the boy he was. Sam, safe and loved and free. "And what now?" Ruth asked. "Now we rebuild," Sister Mercy said, joining them. "The mission needs teachers for the children who'll return from wherever Mercer sent them. The town needs honest folk to replace the corrupt." "You asking us to stay?" Eli said. "I'm offering you a home, all of you, a real home, not just a hiding place." Ruth looked at Eli, hope bright in her eyes. Jonah nodded slowly. Sam tugged on Eli's pants. "Can we stay, Uncle Eli? I like Sister Mercy, and there's other kids to play with." Eli looked around the square, at the people already beginning to clean up, to rebuild, to hope. His ranch was gone, his old life burned away, but maybe that was fitting. Maybe some things needed to die for better things to be born. "Yeah," he said finally, "when we can stay." 6 months later, Eli stood in the mission's garden watching Ruth teach a classroom full of rescued children. She'd taken to teaching like she was born for it, patient and kind but firm when needed. The children adored her. Jonah was in the stable, working with horses and teaching younger boys the skills Eli had taught him. He smiled more now. The weight of constant vigilance finally lifted. And Sam. Sam raced through the garden with a pack of other children, laughing and shrieking with the pure joy of a child who'd never have to run again. His cough had faded with good food and safety. He was growing strong. "Regrets?" Sister Mercy asked, joining Eli in the shade. "None. You? Only that it took so long, that so many suffered before the truth came out." They stood in comfortable silence, watching life bloom where death had once ruled. "Letter came for you," Sister Mercy said eventually, handing him an envelope. "From the territorial capital." Eli opened it, read, and laughed, the first real laugh he'd had in years. "What is it?" Ruth called from the schoolhouse door. "A job offer. They want me to be the new federal marshal for the Southern District. Help clean up what's left of Mercer's organization. Will you take it?" Eli looked at his family, for that's what they were now, truly and completely. Ruth with her students, Jonah with his horses, Sam with his friends. A life rebuilt from ashes, stronger for the burning. No, he said simply. I've got everything I need right here. Ruth smiled, that smile that had become like sunrise to him. Good, because we need you too. As the sun set over San Bray, painting the mission walls gold, Eli Dawson counted his blessings. He'd lost a wife and son to disease, a home to violence, but he'd gained a new family, forged in fire and bound by choice. Sam broke from his playmates and ran to Eli, grabbing his hand. Come on, Uncle Eli. Sister Mercy says dinner's ready, and Ruth made pie. Well then, Eli said, letting himself be pulled along, we'd better hurry. Behind them, the mission bells rang the evening prayer. But for Eli, the prayer had already been answered. He'd found what he hadn't even known he was looking for, a reason to live, to fight, to hope. And in the end, wasn't that what family was? Not just blood, but choice. Not just birth, but rebirth. Not just love given, but love chosen, every day, against all odds. The bad men were gone. The truth had won. And in a mission in San Bray, 4 souls who'd found each other in darkness walked together into the light. It was, Eli thought as Sam's laughter echoed off the walls, more than enough. It was everything.